Welcome to the latest episode of Overcome Out Loud with Charlie Smith. This podcast was created with the sole intention of helping people overcome adversity in their lives. You know, so many people suffer in silence that by having people, courageous people, come on and share their stories and be vulnerable about what they've been through, we give other people hope. And I'm really excited and actually very honored that today Ricky Mendez is actually in studio with us. He's up here in Westlake recording. And welcome, Ricky.
Welcome in studio, baby.
Yeah, I know, it's so great. And we've been working on getting together and doing this live because you're a live kind of guy. And you know, your story is amazing. You know, you've inspired me since I've started to get to know you and watch the things that you're doing. And besides being, you know, this incredible speaker that's helping companies change the trajectory of their sales teams and the way that their workforces show up in their daily lives, your women empowerment passion, you know, the way that you mentor and are mentored by so many people, and the way that you've come so far in your life is inspiring. And I was so excited to have you on, not just because of your own overcome story, but because of how you help so many other people overcome, man. So thanks for coming.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And same. I got my pens and I'm ready to share them too.
Yeah, that's right. It's our life. It's our pen. So, you know, maybe tell us, because this hasn't always been the Ricky Mendez that the world was introduced to. You were a very different version of yourself and created this version of yourself through the things that you're going to help us understand. Tell us a little bit about your origin story, where you grew up and how things started for you, man.
Yeah, so I grew up, my mom and dad, super loving, and, you know, I've made this argument a number of times whether people are living in a comfort zone and people living in poverty. I never had to worry about food on the table. I never had to worry about, you know, where I had to sleep at night. And, you know, my parents always supported me. So I grew up in a very comfort zone, you know, middle class family, which is great and awesome, but also to be able to take risk was another step. That's what I really had to learn, because in, you know, whether it's you're in poverty or you're in the comfort zone, change can be looked at very differently. So when you're really struggling, change is a good thing. When you're in a comfort zone, change is almost a bad thing, and people tell you not to change. So that was one of the interesting parts about the way that I grew up. But luckily for me, my parents did support me in taking some risks, and that made all the difference, and all the adversity that came along with taking some of those risks was a big part of what led to some of the success I had.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some early physical pictures of you and how you weren't taking care of yourself and how you were kind of living this different life. And was that the result of just staying comfortable? Because I think, you know, adolescents make choices based on preference, and I think as we grow up and mature, we make choices based on principle. And when we're in our comfort zone, you know, we're taught to stay in that comfort zone, or our bodies want to keep us in that comfort zone, which means stay comfortable, stay on the couch, stay with these friends, stay doing this. This is what the world told you would do, and we kind of generate the results in life we think we deserve. And so, tell me a little bit about that first risk you took and how hard that was to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think the comfort zone is the most disastrous place you can ever be. I think that's where dreams and goals and aspirations and potential go to die. But it's easier said than done to get out of that. So for me, really the first thing, I grew up in an area where everybody stayed around there for school. So even though it may not seem magnanimous to other people, one of my biggest things was one of the only few people that went away for college and being away from home. And I ended up going to a prep school for high school. I was a bit of a disaster. I was a jerk, didn't understand anything about awareness, about gratitude, about love, nothing, just self-entitled and just thought everything revolved around me. And so I ended up knowing that. I went to a boarding school, which really got me to understand there are other people out there, and to kindness and just simple lessons. And then I went to college. For me, that was a big risk, to get away from, you know, my friends, my family, and just be not close to them and not have them as this, you know, immediate place to go to. So even though it may not sound magnanimous, that for me was a big change for me, and something that so few people did in my neighborhood.
Yeah, God, I'm so glad you pointed that out. I mean, people think taking risks is jumping out of a plane. I mean, you know, getting outside of your comfort zone, going to where there's a group of people you don't know that you've never experienced, leaving the comfort of your friends and all of the social experience you have, that's a big jump for you to take, and it preys on a lot of your insecurity. You know, I remember when I went down to Fairfield University, I grew up in Maine, and so because I was escaping my childhood. For me, Fairfield was just the furthest school I got into. But I remember when I got there, and I looked around, all I saw were rich kids from the greater New York area, and I was this kid from Maine with a jean jacket and Herman Survivor work boots, and my insecurities were like, you don't belong here, you're not going to make it here. And so I appreciate the courage to go to school. And while it doesn't seem like jumping out of a plane or going to fight in a war, for you at the time, it was way outside your comfort zone and probably brought up a lot of insecurity.
Hell yeah. And I think that's a great lesson as we just start to chat is I say this all the time, but the universe does not reward scale. It rewards consistency. So it doesn't have to be like everything this huge scale of risk. It can just be something that's just a little bit uncomfortable. And I'll give you an example. Going to a networking event, like some people just to get up, and if you're an introvert, just to go to a networking event and try to meet some people and introduce yourself to somebody that doesn't know. That's a risk. And even though it may not be huge, you do that again and again and again, you're preparing your brain, your body, and your soul to when the time comes to take that big risk. I've had a lot of practice that's cumulative, that adds up. So taking those big risks, whether it be financially, mentally, emotionally, whatever, they're a little bit easier to do. So you're really training yourself with those little things to build for the big things.
Yeah, it's amazing. So how was school for you? I mean, you were the kid who showed up there entitled and comfortable, and how did it go for you?
Yeah, I learned real fast that there are just other people in the world and that things don't revolve around me. And the simple lessons that I learned through my prep school were simple kindness. And I didn't. The reason I went, I was a disaster. So I was going to play varsity sports as a freshman at my public school. I was quitting all sports as a sophomore in my prep school. And so it was like I was drinking and doing drugs and all that kind of stuff. And I had no appreciation or love for my family, which is ridiculous looking back on it. But what it taught me to do was, absence makes the heart grow fonder. And I started to love my mom, dad, and sister in a way that I never had before, just simply because I was in a different environment. I think that my brain started to learn, little simple lessons that aren't taught in school. Where are the lessons on courage, on empathy, on love, on gratitude, and all those things? I think those are some of the most important lessons that help us not only in our life, but business.
Yeah, we don't, I have my fiance has a foundation that teaches emotional intelligence to at-risk kids, and emotional intelligence should be a class school,
absolutely,
course that we should teach in elementary school, self-awareness, self-regulation, that we can have a thought strategy, that your self-talk matters, that thoughts are random but thinking isn't, and can you think about the right things? And I think as kids we're taught from a very young age, don't run, don't do this, that the world's a scary place, and we start to get that kind of, I like to say, mommy, daddy, trauma and drama. They kind of pre-wire and feed that negative bias that we have, and helping kids understand that that's not necessarily the way they need to think, and it's not necessarily the way they should think, and that there's a different way to think, but we don't teach kids that, and they suffer. We just lost a local girl here, was a goalie for the Stanford University soccer team. She was the game-saving goalie in the national championship game against North Carolina, and they found her a week ago in her dorm room, and she had taken her own life because and as you just said, we don't know what's going on with everybody else. There are other people in the world, and we need to care for one another, and I think that's a big message that you've taught so many of us, is the power of asking for help, and we'll get into that on your journey, and the power of gratitude. I mean, when you sat down, I said, when I think of you, I think of three things. I think of asking for help, I think of gratitude, and I think of empowering badass women to make big differences in this world. And I mean, that's a far cry from a guy quitting sports, in prep school, drinking and doing a bunch of drugs. And so we got to know how this all happened, man, because it's a big transformation.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing is, I still remember when I was in prep school, the first book that I read in terms of the self-development journey, and it was Jack Canfield's Chicken Soup for the Soul. And I'm a very slow reader. I've never been tested. I'm pretty sure I have ADD. And so for me to read consistently, it takes a really long time. So I would read the short stories. I would look at the table of contents. I would say, well, okay, this story is a page or half a page. I would read that one. And I still remember where I was when I read the first story. I remember what it was. I remember how it made me feel. I remember the people around me. And I remember how it felt. Like I got emotional reading this story. And it just, for me, it made me just say, hey, there's other people out there, and feeling good is a derivative or a result of making other people feel good. And I remember exactly where I was. And I think that was kind of the first, before I got into investing in myself, paying people to teach me, paying people to coach me. that was my first real mentor, I would say, outside of my family.
Yeah, we don't pay that enough privilege. I mean, we expect that if you're a world-class athlete, even if you're in high school, if a high school athlete, we assume you've got a coach. Most kids who are trying to excel at a very high level, they will have a position coach, they'll have a skill coach. But when it comes to our business acumen, when it comes to our mindset, our mental performance, we somehow dismiss, like, I should handle this on my own. But there's a lot of people a lot further down the road, and we can talk a little bit about the people that have helped shape and mold you, guys like Dave Meltzer, guys like John Ashraf in San Diego, Tom Billy. I mean, you've surrounded yourself with a remarkable group of people. And for somebody who was, that kid in prep school who learned this little lesson, Red Chicken Soup by the Soul, I really am excited to hear about, because I think a lot of people don't see that path. They really, I said recently when I was speaking on Sunday that no one needs to win or worry alone, and so how did you learn this first forte into asking somebody for help?
I mean, that came from when I started my own business and I started speaking, and that I had, my goodness, I had 7 offices before that. I worked for a really big company. I had 7 offices all over Southern California. I made really good money and spent like nothing. I didn't have many expenses. And we did a wellness event, and it was just for fun. I had learned about acidity and alkalinity, and that's when physically I really transformed, and we just did it for fun. And a woman came up and confided in me. I didn't know her, and she asked me to coach her husband. And I was like, I didn't do coaching at the time. I just started, and I still had my job. So it was kind of interesting. I said, look, what's going on? And she had 2 kids, 3 and 6. And I was like, look, I'm not married. I don't have kids. I don't know what that's like, but try this. And she implemented what I had given her to try. And she said it changed the dynamic of her mornings, relationship with her children, relationship with her husband. And I quit my job. I was like, that was the best feeling I've ever had from what she told me, how she felt based on what I gave her to try.
Which was?
So I said, when the kids are running around and going crazy, like literally just say, grab them, say, what does gratitude mean? They're not going to know what it means, right? And that she did that, and she said that the kid asked what it meant, which is the whole point of it, to create a different dialogue between parent and child. So the parent explains what gratitude means, and then this is what she told me. She said after she did that, a couple of days later, the kids get in the car and they call them grateful fors. And now they just start firing off. Mommy, I'm grateful for this. Mommy, I'm grateful for this. Mommy, I'm grateful for that. And they do that all the way to school. And she said it changed the whole dynamic and energy of the morning. So now, but what's utopic about it is those 2 kids, they go talk to 2 kids. And then those 2 kids go talk to 2 kids. And they don't even know it, but they're being conditioned. In that whole experience, she didn't necessarily, say, Ricky, can you help me? She said, can you coach my husband? So indirectly, she kind of asked me for help. And I was a part of being able to facilitate that help. And then when I started my business, I didn't know anything, and I hemorrhaged money for 8 months and made nothing. So that's about when I met Dave, and he said, ask and attract. So spend an hour asking for people if they can help you and offer your help. And that's how I built my whole business. I just did an event, and I said, look, if you know of anybody that can help me, or if you know anybody that would benefit from this, let me know. Give me a referral. And so he just made it so simple. It's like, yeah, I can do it all my own and pay all my own dummy tax, or I can go and ask for help. And the beauty part is that when we ask for help, we honor the people that are willing to help us. So it actually makes them feel awesome. It makes us feel awesome. It's this huge win.
It is. And that's so great that you said that, because, often I'm apt to pick up the check. I'll pick out, it's on me. And what I realized is that I'm becoming very selfish, right? There was part of my ego that was attached to picking up the check, and I was denying the other person the opportunity to do something that would make them feel good. And I think we forget, and you just brought this point home so hard, is, asking somebody for help is giving them a gift. And we often see it as what? An inconvenience. They're too busy. I don't want to ask them. And meanwhile, we're there toiling, and really struggling to get through whatever it is we're going through. And a simple phone call from somebody who's a little further down the road gives them this uplift that helps them through their day. And I don't think people really connect those dots as well as you do.
100%. And I think this is another this takeaway moment, if we will. But number one, it comes from strength. Asking for help comes from strength, not weakness. People are so afraid to do it because I need to do it on my own. Oh, I need to be strong. No. The stronger you are, the more you can ask for help. And the second thing I want to make sure to whoever's listening is you may ask for help for 10 people. Maybe 5 say yes. Maybe 5 say go F yourself, right? whatever they say is almost irrelevant, because when you keep asking, it's a good energy to put in the world. Some will, some won't, but keep going and keep asking. Because I think when people finally build up enough courage to ask for help, and then for whatever reason somebody says no, or they say yes and then don't, keep going, keep asking, because somebody will help you, and you get to honor them by allowing them to help you. That's how I felt when I helped this woman completely indirectly. It was literally, I quit a very comfortable job to make nothing for 8 months and hemorrhage money. That's how good of a feeling it was, and it altered the trajectory of my life.
So when people are facing those moments and they're trying something new, they're taking that risk, and I think many people who are stuck, that listen to this and have something they need to overcome, whether it's a financial setback, a relationship setback, a drug, an alcohol problem, a medical diagnosis, a family death. There's lots of things people are struggling with, just the pressures of everyday life today. What's the narrative that you tell yourself when it comes to having the courage to ask for help and finding the courage gene instead of the inconvenience gene?
Sure. And I would say, look, we can live in a couple different worlds. The world I want to live in is potential and possibility. I want to maximize potential, and who knows what's possible out there. And when we ask for help, that's the world that we get to live in, because we can maximize our potential, and who knows what can help. When people help us, it can go off in so many different arenas, and it's exciting to live in that space. So instead of thinking, oh, what if this person doesn't help me? I like to play the what if game. We play the what if game in what if it doesn't work out? What if I get hurt? What if this happens? What if the negative happens? Well, what if the awesome stuff happens? What if it actually works out? What if I get somebody in my network that can alter my life? And what if through helping me, now what if I can help somebody else and change the trajectory of their life? Because that's the best feeling on the planet. So what if in that potential and possibility, start having your brain go in there, what if that happens? That would be awesome. What if this person can really help me, and because they help me, I can help somebody else? What if that happens? And I think when our brain starts going there, it can't be grateful and fearful at the same time. So we choose every single second of every single day. So it's almost like preparing yourself to go and ask for help, and then win, lose, or draw, whatever happens, keep doing that, because the potential and the possibility is endless.
And it's really changed the trajectory of your life. And you've started to, I think that expectancy theory says what we focus on expands. And so as you build that ask for help muscle, you become less fearful, and it's allowed you to put some amazing people in your life. So talk a little bit about how you went from, just kind of starting and getting off the ground in your new business and starting to ask for help to then surrounding yourself with that next level of people, because it's pretty amazing.
And I think I like how you called it a muscle, because it's a skill set. Asking for help is a skill set. It takes freaking practice. And it also allows you to be vulnerable, which I think that is kind of, we've heard this before, but it's kind of the new leadership. Nobody wants to follow somebody who's never had a challenge or an instance in their life where they felt vulnerable. I think vulnerability is great to be able to share, especially from the masculine energy. But so I think asking for help and then offering help, that's, to answer your question, that's where I started to, when I would ask for help, maybe some people could, maybe some people couldn't, but then said, hey man, can I do anything for you? Now, I also learned from Tom, who's a dear mentor and friend, I stopped asking what I could do for you, and I started finding that out through my own research. So that was one of the things that I have a keynote now called Give to Give, Not Give to Get. And people still ask me all the time, why do you do all these things for other people when there's no return? Number one, there is a return. There's many more returns than just monetary. But Tom brought this up many times. In my arena with him, he said, I got so good he couldn't ignore me. And all I did was I was able enough to go to his house, and somebody invited me to his house to watch Impact Theory. I would just bring their staff books. I would bring them pizza on 2-day shoots. I would just help their staff. And in that, he was like, I have to acknowledge what this guy's doing, because he's looking after all the people that look after me. And I think the way that I got to meet him is pretty important too in this whole give to give. I gave a keynote at Keller Williams, and a guy asked me to coach him, and I gave him my coaching menu. He said it couldn't afford it. And I said, look, my mentor, David Meltzer, said to help people if I feel they'll help their life, even if there's nothing in it for me. So I coached him for a couple months. He had a great Q2 in Keller Williams that year. And he had known Tom through Inside Quest. And when it was Inside Quest, and then he moved it to Impact Theory. So he had the relationship. He asked me if I wanted to go to his house. I said, heck yeah. But it would have never have happened if I didn't offer my help for somebody who I felt had that potential and possibility in his own life.
Yeah, good begets good, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if we're trying to just be the best version of ourselves and see how we can be of service to somebody else, we don't know what's going to happen. But I know this: if I spend my days in scarcity, if I spend I spent a lot of days in scarcity. I mean, you're talking about somebody who spent a lot of days chewing a lot of Vicodin and drinking a lot of alcohol, doing bad and getting bad and hurting people. I know what that feels like, and I know no good really ever came of it. Not for me, not for my family, not for the people I said I cared about. However, the past is not predictive, and just because something happened doesn't mean what happens next can't be different. So when I changed, and I changed the way I behaved, and I started to behave the way I should behave, the trajectory of my life changed greatly. And so, unintended consequences, I think, are what you're talking about, of just trying to be of service. And I like the humility, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that principle and how it served you, because you didn't go in to serve Tom. You didn't go in to bring him something cool. You went in to help the people that are helping him, which is, in my estimation, an act of humility to say, I don't need to put myself in his place. I can put myself in their place and just try to be of service.
Yeah, and I think and it serves too, because I asked them, what can I do, for Tom, but without asking Tom directly. And who doesn't like pizza? So I would bring them some pizza, and they were all super appreciative. And I think that's another takeaway moment. It's the little things, man. It's the little things. And I have this one thing in terms of humility. Every once a month, I'll do a random act of kindness, and I try to do it where they don't know it's me. And some of the and I'll try to film it too. So, like, for example, when I would travel a lot, and I'd be in the South, I love Waffle House, right?
Yeah,
Judge me
sure.
when you're perfect. I love Waffle House.
Are you kidding me? Where else can you get a full breakfast of really, really delicious food for like $4.99? Right. I was just there in October.
Yeah,
let's go.
So some of those times where I've actually bought somebody without them knowing a $6 meal. I go up, I say, I'll pay for the meal. When they come, let them know it's paid for. They like freak out, and it's $6, so it's just the little things I think are cumulative, and we overlook them. Like, they can't make that big of a difference, but I found it's the little things like the pizza that for Tom's staff that made the biggest difference.
Yeah, let's talk about happiness, because some people say it's the pursuit of happiness. I like to say the pursuit is happiness, which is the daily activities that we engage in. I have like a 7-part formula to happiness. Like, what kind of relationship do you have with your hobbies? What kind of relationship do you have with yourself? What kind of acts are you doing for other people? Are you using the gifts God gave you? Or are you stagnant? If you love to play the guitar, is it sitting in your closet, or do you play the guitar? And do you play it for other people? And the behaviors of happiness precede the feelings of happiness. I think people think, I'll wait to do that when I feel, but it's actually the doing. And so when you walk out of Waffle House, and look, I've known you for a while now, and I see you, and when you come in person, if you're watching this, that smile's on his face. He lives joy, and it's because, but it's from the inside, right? It's not this external, when I'll be happy. It's like you get happiness from a $6 random act of kindness, from going to scout the school that you have an opportunity to talk at, from getting Carolina on Kelly Clarkson. The smile comes from doing, and I think we just need to see that, so we can do more instead of sit around doing less and feeling less.
I think that's a great point too, because people inverse it.
Right.
When I get this, I'll be happy. No, bullshit. You can think and imagine visualization, and the whole point of neuroscience and visualization, you can feel it, so you can feel any way you want. You can feel like garbage, or you can feel good. And I think that comes from, a lot of my keynotes from John and some of the biggest mentors that talk a lot about the brain science and neuroplasticity and all that kind of stuff. And the thing that I'm most known for whenever I go talk, and what people want the most from me, is my gratitude poem. It's a simple gratitude poem. Now, the gratitude poem, on the first side is the challenge side, so things that are people usually bitching and complaining about, and how to convert them from negative to positive. But it's just this simple poem that everybody asks me about, and I've read it every single day, with the exception of 3 days, since July 15th, 2015. So I've read it every single day. And now people say, oh, that's just Ricky. He's just positive. And I say, no, asshole, I work on it.
That's
every
right.
single day. It's a skill set. So, and I intend to most days to do it before I pick up my phone. But I read a gratitude poem before I start my day. Every single freaking day. Doesn't take long. Might take 2 minutes. And so then when I go out in the world, I have this. I have been programmed in a way, shape, or form that makes me feel good. A lot of challenges happen. Now I can deal with them, in my opinion, in a more productive way, because I have been programmed in some way. And it's not this 25-minute meditation. You know, at the beginning of the year, my business blows up because people want to run 20 miles a day. They want to meditate for 4 hours a day, and they want to eat lettuce. That's their new health plan because they think scale, right? And it's not scale. It's about consistency. So I say, no, write a 2-line gratitude poem, read it for 20 seconds every day. Like, start with that. So I think that's exactly right. People inverse it. I'll be happy when. Well, I can choose to be happy right now. And that sounds utopic and it sounds simple because it is. So, and then it's just funny, man. When you start to do that on a consistent basis, things start to change, just like diet. Change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I don't think there's ever been a truer quote to live by, not just to post on social media.
No, it's very true. And I want to talk about gratitude for a second. It was something I was really wanted to, because you've transformed. So I've had a gratitude practice for years. I have a journal. I'm on my second one of 500 pages. Every day I write down my gratitude list, and I write it in a specific way that I'm grateful for the fact that. But over the course of stretching myself and doing this new public speaking and mental performance training and working with large groups in training, I had a lot of anxiety, because I'd been a commercial real estate developer for years. I've been on the hard asset side, now moving over to this emotional side. And you really transformed my gratitude list, because I wrote, and I remember writing it, thinking of you. I wrote, I'm grateful for my anxiety because it brings me closer to my God, because I'm realizing that I'm not in faith when I'm sitting over here in fear, and that I'm really not connected to my higher power, and I'm not really trusting my higher power because he's led me to this place. I'm doing it. The results of me doing it are positive. So I'm sitting here in fear, and I got that from when I heard you talk about gratitude for the crying baby. Gratitude, you've got this innate ability to say, look, you and I think you call it your gratitude chat, like, give me anything and you'll turn it into a thing to be grateful for. And I love to hear about where that came from, because, like I said, it really helped me transform, even when I think things aren't good for me, that they're showing me something that can get better.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's something, it's funny, whenever I'm at an event and, most people say, write 3 things you're grateful for. I say, write 3 things down that piss you off.
Right on, man.
Because we can work on converting. I think it's just like anything else, like we're talking about. There's skill sets. Work on them. The better you work on them, the more you work on them, the better you get. So when we get in shape, you're going to get more in shape running uphill or downhill. When you've ever played any sports, anything at all, do they have you run hills or do they have you run downhill? So gratitude, I think, is very important, not just for the things that are easy to be grateful for. Anybody can be grateful when it's rainbows and ice cream outside. It's when the challenges come and how efficient and productive I am at converting that energy from negative to positive. Gratitude is one of the ways to be able to do that. So, and those were the things like Jack Canfield, Asaraf Meltzer, Tom Bilyeu. They all had specific ways on how I looked at it. But the Screaming Baby was the first time where I was like, when I'm on a red-eye flight, I get an aisle seat, I got my neck pillow, I can sleep like a baby. So the thing that just pissed me off, and I always say, I apologize to people who have kids out there, but I was like, somebody shut that baby up or I'm going to freaking shut it up. And it just drove me nuts. And I literally remember I was going from LA to Boston, and I said, I'm grateful, period, for the Screaming Baby on the plane, period, because it means that I can hear. I think I call it simplistic beauty, man. I mean, we woke up today. We got a pulse. You know how many people had goals and dreams yesterday, didn't wake up today? But do we give thanks for that? No, we wake up and we bitch and we complain. Well, hold on, just time out for just a second. Do you feel that? So no matter what we're going through, there is something. And I think that is a great conversion of energy. I think conversion of energy is one of the greatest skills on the planet. The greatest conversion of energy I can think of, is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. The most unfathomable, inhumane thing to ever happen in human history. And Viktor Frankl was in a death camp. And I believe it was his mom, his dad, and his wife were burned alive. And when you talk about perspective, and he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning that got him out of that. And he credits that book and logotherapy and all that stuff getting him out of that place. And the number one hack or brain hack that I have to stop my bitching and complaining is this a Viktor Frankl problem? Is what I'm going through a Viktor Frankl problem? No, it's not. Now I can get back to being productive and profitable.
Yeah, and I think the lesson that came out of that for all of us is that the Nazi soldiers, the people in the concentration camps, could take his family and they could take parts of his freedom, but they could never take the way he reacted to life. And he chose in each moment how he wanted to react to life. And he had a bit of a playbook. He had his own set of values, and maybe, we can transition into how important it is to know what we stand for and to know what our values are, because for me, values are like another muscle, right? I mean, I had for years, as I talk about, when I was in the throes of my addiction, my dishonesty muscle was very strong. I grew up from a very young age, because of what was happening in my house, learning to be dishonest. I'd lie about what was happening to me. I'd lie about how I grew up. I'd say my dad took me to baseball games because I didn't want anyone to know he was beating me. I didn't want anyone to know he'd bash my head against a brick fireplace. So my dishonesty muscle got very strong. And I found, in order to live the life I wanted to have, that I had to start working out my honesty muscle. So in the face of adversity, my strongest reaction would be my strongest value. And for a lot of times it was dishonesty. In the face of adversity, the lie was easier than the truth, because it would protect me. Learning to be honest, I have to tell you, as simple as it may sound, was very hard for me, because it exposed me that I'm not perfect, that I did make a mistake, that I have to own the fact that I did this yesterday, and I regret that, and I'd like to make that right, because the truth is I didn't miss the meeting. I scheduled another meeting that I thought was more important. I couldn't say that before,
Right.
So tell me, and I think that's what Viktor Frankl taught us, is he had a set of values that were how he chose to respond.
Yeah.
And because those values were so strong and important to him, he could rely on them in the face of adversity. And so maybe you can give us a little bit on the importance of values, Ricky.
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody. I mean, and I think that's a great rabbit hole to go down. What's important to you? For mine, my number one thing is gratitude. It's just, I can find, if people bring me a challenge, and not saying, just like the woman who confided in me, I don't know what being married is like. I've never been married. I don't know what having kids is like. I've heard it's very challenging and very rewarding. So I don't know what that's like. And that's the first thing that I share when people bring me problems or challenges. But what I do feel like I'm good at is changing perspective that makes me feel good, as simply as it can be. So that's a huge value to me. And gratitude is one of those ways to do that. Now, I went down a rabbit hole of literally asking myself, okay, I'm going to be speaking or doing this. What is important to me? But you don't have to be a speaker or coach to do this practice. You can be anything, and it works for your life. So a good question to ask is, for me, and it might sound utopic, but it's something that can be very simple, is what's important to me, what are my values, and what do I want to contribute to the world? Those are simple things. And again, they don't have to be huge and magnanimous. It can be going outside and smiling at somebody. It can be texting a friend and being like, hey, I'm here for you. Small things add up to make this huge difference. So I think that's a really good question for people to ask, is what's important to me? What are my values? That's how I've constructed kind of mine.
Yeah, it's great, because I think when you live by values, you can have a successful day anytime, because you can apply your values to anything. One of my values is being helpful, right? So being of service and being helpful is one of my core values. And that's how I want to show up. And so in the course of a day, how can I be helpful? How can I be honest? How can I be hopeful? And I think hope is another important kind of cousin to gratitude, which is, and you can hold hope and hurt in the same. You can be, that kind of toxic positivity, I think, is out there a bit. And I'm a much more optimistic person than I'm a positive person, because it's hard for me to say this is good for me. What I can say is I believe there's a lesson in it. I believe that I'm going to learn something, and I believe that the future is going to be a lot better as a result of whatever it is I'm going through. And that perspective is important, no?
Absolutely. And I think and it's so applicable to everything, right? There's not a person out here that hasn't had challenges. And we can even make the argument, the greater the challenges, the greater the success. If you can stay with it and on a long enough time frame, you can win. And that's one of the things that, man, no matter what, and I will literally say this at an event, I'll say, whatever your challenge is, big or small, come and talk to me. I bet you together we can put our brains together to figure out, not necessarily that you're grateful for it, but redefine the meaning of what it means. And the reason I'm confident in that, when I had a bunch of sales reps, we sat down, and my biggest go-to when somebody had a big challenge was like, did somebody die? Did somebody die? That's what I would say when somebody was going through. And his name was Ivory Heard. I still remember this. And he was like, yeah, my mom was murdered in a home invasion. And I was like, man, it hit me like, this is early when I'm coaching. It hit me in my gut. And we sat there for like 2 hours and like cried and redefined the meaning of the reason of why that happened in his mind. And the long story short was that he had a closer relationship with his brother, and they were into things now that they probably wouldn't have been if they weren't forced to reunite at such a young age.
Wow.
And I've had people come up to me after events and give me really, really challenging life and death things. They stand on line or whatever, and then maybe the next person comes up and they say, I got fired. And it's like, did you hear the first person and what they were talking about? And then it's almost like, okay, yeah, you can go back to the online. But it's great because big or small, there's nothing, in my opinion, there's nothing that we can't convert into what Napoleon Hill called seed of equivalent benefit.
Yeah, I think, and this is, I think where the rubber meets the road is we can talk about problems. People love to talk about problems, and when we focus on problems, we really do get more problems. But when we focus on solutions, we do find solutions. And to your point, solution isn't complete resolution of an issue. Mm-hmm. Solution is just what's the little step you can take. What's the next mark you can make? What's the simplest thing you can do that makes the situation a little better. You don't have to do $100 million in a year, but can you make 3 phone calls to clients that are in need right now? You don't have to, you don't have to reach your goals, but what can you do if your marriage is struggling? What can you do to understand the needs of your wife and then do something simple to meet them? And so giving people those little steps to take is really important.
Absolutely. I'll share this. Weldon Long is one of my really first mentors, and exactly what you just said. So one of the things that he has, and again, I'm not married. I don't know what this is like, but maybe this could work. He just simply asked, go to your spouse and ask, what can I do to make your day better? And the thing that his current wife said to him was, when you throw your socks in the laundry, have them right side out. That was it. And like, she was psyched that he would do this from now on. And he just asked this simple thing. And that's why I think simplicity I think we complicate simplicity.
Yeah, man. I so agree. So as we wrap up and I mean, this is just kind of the epitome of who you are, the amount of information that you've provided, the value that you provide. People are struggling, they're looking at the world and they've got a set of glasses on. What are the kind of, and obviously let's put gratitude as the number one thing that you can provide to people. But can you explain to people how they could start a gratitude practice, a meaningful gratitude practice, where they can find your gratitude poem and how they can use that to get them out of whatever it is they're going through right now, Ricky?
Sure. And I would say right now, just my perspective, we are living in the greatest time in human history to be alive. I don't think we'll ever have another time to develop new skill sets, expand our minds to what's possible in life and business, or to grow relationship capital. Half of the things that I've done in the last 2 years, they're because of COVID. Now, granted, are people hurting out there? Are people dying out there? Yes. The only way I choose to honor them is to live a productive and profitable and happy life. That's the way I look at it. I'm unapologetic in that sense. Not that people aren't hurting. People are hurting out there. But if I focus on the hurt, I'm just going to get more hurt. So I truly believe now is the greatest time in human history to be alive, bar none. With the digital age and the investments and the opportunities out here, I think they're like never before. Gratitude poem, for me, super simple. Write down the thing that just drives you absolutely nuts and redefine the meaning of it. So literally write on a paper, and it can be, I've had somebody say, when you're in line for traffic and then somebody cuts the line and then cuts in front of you, that used to drive them nuts. So we sat down and we said, okay, so if you take yourself in that situation, what can you possibly be grateful for? Or what is the silver lining? Or what is the seed of equivalent benefit? I said, do you have a car? I said, yeah. I said, do you have transportation? You've been blessed with transportation. Do you know how many people want a car and they can't have a car? So it slows the game down in my sense. So I would write something down that drives you absolutely nuts. And if you can't find a way or a way to redefine that meaning, ask somebody. What a great practice. Hey, mom. Hey, dad. Hey, brother. Hey, sister. Hey, friend. This thing drives me nuts. What do you think is a positive side of that? Or what is the silver lining here? And if you can't, DM me, email me. If you want a template, you can go to gratitudepoem.com. That's the site that you can download a free PDF.
Oh, that's awesome, man, and thank you so much. And so we'll tag all of your social media platforms, but give people quick as they're listening how they can get in touch with you, where they can follow you and learn more. And I'll tell you, I've learned so much following you and being connected with you. Your messages are inspirational. Watching what you're doing with young people, watching that you spread this message of gratitude and hope and asking for help. It's remarkable, and championing badass women that are making big changes in this world. I mean, from where you came from and what you're doing, it's just inspiring, dude.
Thank you, man. It's been an honor. RickyMendez.com. Ricky Mendez Speaks is my Instagram. Ricky Mendez on YouTube. Really, that's anything with Ricky Mendez. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming in, man. Great to see you, and good luck up in Ojai.
Awesome. Thank
Right
you.
on.
Thank you.